so cute.
Hello, we are home.
Yeah.
And it is currently June of 2025, which means the last video that we put up on this channel was like, August last year from our Shanghai trip. And I think life has changed a lot. We're here to give some updates so that you can be caught up with everything that's been happening, and also for us to just remember all the important things that have happened so that, we might be reminded even a few years down the road.
So we'll be sharing about why we went on a sabbatical, how come we were away from social media for a while, and where we went, why we did it, some lessons that we learned, some experiences, and as well as what we are up to now. So maybe we can start right from the beginning.
From the very beginning.
Why we went on a sabbatical.
I think back then, this was probably October of last year, of 2024, and we just had such a crazy year. We came back from our Shanghai shows, and we were actually preparing to go off for a full-fledged China tour in December, and that meant that the whole year was so busy and packed, and we were together a lot because the nature of our work is just that we spend a lot of time together. But how much of that was quality time was really another conversation altogether. So when October came along, I think we had like an explosive fight, and it was tough because it felt like it was a recurring thing. Every few months we would find ourselves in a similar position again, where we would be fighting over the same things, which kind of always spawns from a lack of quality time and conversation with each other, understanding of each other. So in October, after that fight happened, after everything cooled down, I think you had this desire to go away, because I remember you saying that you don't remember when was the last time you even had a day free on your Google Calendar, which is shared, by the way. And I think that probably spurred that idea. You want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I think, I just felt like, being in Singapore is just madness. It's just so fast-paced, and especially with our lives, just constantly gigs, teaching, and other commitments. And I just felt like we've never really lived overseas before. So, and I thought, maybe this is a perfect chance. So I went to check our calendar, and it seemed like the earliest we could leave is after Chinese New Year. So in February of this year. And we could leave until April. So that would be at least 2-3 months. But later we decided to leave until July to get a replacement for that booking that we were booked for. And so it just felt like we needed to go overseas, just to get away for a while. So I think that's when, the idea came. So we had about 3 or 4 months to prepare.
Yeah. And I think we didn't even have the right, we didn't even call it a sabbatical at that point. We just knew like we needed to change, and we couldn't keep coming back to the same fights and the same situation, same old, every few months, So we knew like it would be difficult to make a drastic change if we had stayed in Singapore. I'm sure it would have been possible for other people or like in another circumstance, but since our calendar was free and our resources could grant it, we just felt like, and there was that desire. We've been talking about, possibly living overseas, because we've never been on like exchange or lived overseas before, right? So this was a good chance to reconnect and to just recalibrate and realign with God and just seek Him in what our next season was supposed to be, because we weren't thriving. On the surface, everything looked like it was busy and good, but we knew that this busyness was keeping us apart and devolving into the same arguments over and over again. So we started planning for it. And how did that planning look like for you?
I think we knew we had these 4 months to prepare ourselves. And I think for me, the first thing I knew was that I wouldn't be able to teach anymore. Actually, some of my students wanted me to teach on Zoom still while we were away, but I was just thinking that would defeat the purpose of a sabbatical. So I knew I had to give up teaching. And I think deep down I knew that maybe that season for teaching would be over also, because we wanted to leave space, and I think as the planning evolved, we realized that, what if God calls us to stay overseas, and not even come back, so when we were sharing this with people, we just wanted to leave it open, and I think it would be unfair to my students and their parents also to keep them, waiting and guessing. So I knew the best thing I had to do was to find a replacement teacher for them. And, if I came back and if I wanted to teach again, I could always reach out again. But I think it was better for a clean cut. And I don't really enjoy teaching on Zoom anyway. And yeah, that 3 months was difficult because I had to, prepare my students in advance, and I have to make sure the next teacher can carry on well. So I gave them, about 3 months notice that I'll be leaving in February. And yeah, so it was tough as well. A lot of these students have been with me for a long time, and a lot of them have become friends, like we know their families and we've hung out, and it's very difficult. If it's just for the money, it's not worth it. There are better ways to earn money probably. But yeah, that was one of the big things, just having to give up every student. And I think also, planning to live out of a suitcase, I had to decide, do I even want to bring my saxophone, or how many do I bring? And realistically, I knew I had to sell a lot, and maybe at that point I had like 10 or 20 of my favorite saxophones left, but I knew I could only maximum maybe bring one, or even none, So that was another tough pruning process of getting rid of my favorite saxophones and mouthpieces. And yeah, it's crazy, like I ended up having just 4, like 1 soprano, 1 alto, 2 tenors, which is quite unheard of in the past.
From your peak of how many?
It's like 40 or 50. Yeah, that was tough. But yeah, I think it was just all part of the pruning process, and we decided to travel light also, because if we're going to Europe, it's a lot of trains, and we didn't want to take planes as much as possible. So in the end, we did one big luggage each, and 1 hand carry, I think. So it was really very lean, and that was also, we had to prepare, how little we could bring, and that helped us to really prune our lives.
Yeah, I think that was a good way of helping to start the decluttering process also. When we moved over to this place, that was round 1 already, but I think looking ahead to the sabbatical, I also knew like there were a lot of things that I couldn't bring along as well, and so there was no point keeping them at home too. So I think it was starting to transform us and put us in a headspace of, okay, what do I really need, and things that I can fit into a suitcase, it's not that much. So do I really need all the clothes? And especially if we're not performing and I'm not doing gigs, a large part of my wardrobe is show attire. So a lot of that could go also. So what we could really just bring on this trip was a good thought exercise on helping us to declutter the things that we had in our home. So planning for that, was there anything else that changed along the way for you that, I know we didn't have the language of like the sabbatical, but I knew we were seeking God. Like I definitely was asking God if going away was what He wanted us to do, because sometimes it feels like going away is a form of escapism, and I didn't know if that was the right course of action, especially because we would be going away for a few months. So I remember praying and asking God to reveal to us if this was really His will for us. And I was jogging one day and just keeping my eyes out for anything, just thanking God for that run that day. And I remember running past this guy who was wearing a t-shirt, and his t-shirt actually said, "Go forth with the Spirit." So to me, I suddenly got really excited, because I was like, I've been asking God for a sign, right? For a confirmation that this was really something that would please Him. And when I saw that guy in the t-shirt, I was like, I ran up to him, I ran past him, and I turned around, and I rarely do this, but I turned around and I told him, "I like your t-shirt, it's great." And he was just like, "Yeah." And I think I wrote that in my journal, and I remember coming back and telling him, I feel a sense of peace about going away, and that we should continue to ask God about like what this sabbatical, like what the objectives would be, and what's the purpose of us going away, so that it doesn't just turn into another mindless holiday, which was not what we were looking for at that point. Yeah.
I think on hindsight, I can see it's really what God wanted for us, because I think it's prepared us for our current life, which we'll share more about later. But I feel like, part of me didn't want to do it as well. I don't want to have to give up my income sources, and we're very comfortable doing what we're doing, and we knew it was unsustainable, and I would have loved to just carry on our usual lifestyle without feeling burnt out. But I just felt like that was God's way of telling us, like, you really need to get away. And I think this has been more transformative than we can imagine. Especially I think a lot of the tough decisions were made even before going on the trip, and also planning out our finances to, because we know we would not have any
income.
And so, like, making sure we have enough to survive during that period. So I think on hindsight, it was definitely necessary. And so after that, we started planning for the trip. We had many ideas, of where we could, could have been Japan, Australia, many places in Europe. So even in Asia, Vietnam, Thailand, and I think, long story short, we decided on a place in Spain. It is an island called Menorca. So an hour's plane ride from Barcelona. And very, size of the island is about same size as Singapore. A lot of nice beaches, a lot of trekking, a lot of nature, which was perfect for us. And because it's a summer town, so a lot of holiday homes. The hotels mainly serve tourists from the UK. Summer
to autumn.
So and that's why we managed to get the rental like super cheap. It was like 1,000 Singapore dollars for 35 days of rental on Airbnb. Nice 2-bedroom apartment near the beach. So it was beautiful and really cheap. So
the funny thing is, this place wasn't even on our radar at all. We were considering Cyprus because, we also wanted to... Okay, one of the main reasons why we were looking overseas is because we knew that there were a lot of things tying us to life as usual in Singapore, which is our work, expectations, ministry, serving in church, and the comfort of our home, the convenience of living in Singapore. And we just wanted a life that was different, like a complete reset. So I think we felt like a change of environment would really facilitate that, which is why we were looking overseas. And we were thinking of Cyprus because we had seen some like high rocks training camps before, and we wanted to just take the time to also train our bodies and to really see what we could do if we almost like had the mindset of a full-time athlete. But eventually we had a dinner with my brother, and he just randomly brought up this, I say randomly, but I don't think anything is a coincidence anymore. He brought up a place called Palma, and he said, like, if you ever found yourself in Palma, Mallorca, I would join you. So I think at that dinner table, Daniel being Daniel, he's really fast with these things, and he was already checking on Airbnb, and I think the closest apartment that you found on Airbnb was on the next island, which is Menorca, the smaller island that I think not even many Singaporeans have heard of. Like, I didn't even know where that place was until Auntie searched it up. And because the rental was so affordable in the off season, we decided to just place the booking. And because Airbnb has a refund option anyway, so we just held on to it, and as we prayed more into it, it felt like the right place to go. So we stuck with it, and we went to Menorca for 35 days.
That was just supposed to be the first part of our sabbatical, and the plan was to eventually slowly make our way to Cape Town, South Africa, which is also beautiful, and we did a lot of research. And same thing, it was going to be off season, so we could get the apartment cheap. And we planned to come back only in July. And so maybe we can share about the experience. We reached the island of Menorca.
I want to show what's happening here. If you're looking at us stroking something, but not understanding why. MJ climbed onto my lap. Oh, that's sweet girl.
Very sweet,
Sweet girl.
She's been so sweet lately. She wants to be part of every video.
Yes, that's right. Every conversation, every Zoom call, everything lah. Maybe we can zoom out a little bit, then we can like have her in the. Yeah, so cute. Okay, MJ is with us for this video now. Yeah, so we actually started off the trip attending a friend's wedding in New Jersey. Then we slowly made our way to Barcelona because the island is so small, they don't really do a lot of international flights, so we had to pass through Barcelona anyway. But we decided a good place to start in Barcelona was to go back to the La Sagrada Familia, the cathedral built by Gaudi, which is still under construction, because the last time we went there, it was honestly, I think if there's any place that you should visit on earth architecturally, this would be at the top of my list, because the whole purpose of why he built the cathedral, decisions that he made as a master craftsman and architect, is that, you know, when you're there and listening to the audio guide, the person really saying like, Gaudi wanted the gospel to be on the outside of cathedrals. To anyone who has been to a cathedral in Europe, you know that the insides are usually opulent and lined with beautiful art and paintings. But the gospel is meant to go out into the world, so why would that not be the other way around? So that was the concept behind his 4 different and why the gospel story is carved on the outside of the cathedral. And I think it changed me as a person and how I view our craft and art. Like, what if our life's legacy was just so that the gospel could be preached to the ends of the earth, and that people, the millions of people, would come and, you know, go to the La Sagrada Familia, would be exposed to the gospel and the hope that Jesus brings. Yeah, so I think that was transformative for us, and we wanted to revisit because, you know, since it's under construction, every few years when you visit again, there might be changes. So we wanted to go and just remind ourselves that, you know, the way that we are starting our sabbatical is to really focus on Christ and what God wants us to do in this next season. And maybe not even do, to just be who He wants us to become. So we started off in Barcelona. We spent a few days there. Then we made our way to Menorca, the small island. Do you remember our first day there?
Yeah, it was a big culture shock because we took a taxi and it dropped us at the Airbnb. But as we were driving into this small town, everything was closed. So the supermarkets, the restaurants, they were all closed. So, and you know, planned to cook every meal as much as possible. So we asked the taxi drivers, like, is everything usually closed? Because we reached on a Sunday, so we're not sure, is it just because it's a Sunday? He was like, yes, during these few months that you're here, everything is closed. You have to go to the nearest town, bigger town, and there's only maybe like 2 or 3 big supermarkets in the whole island. So we told him, you know what? And because there were so few taxis around, so we told him like, hey, do you mind waiting for us? We'll just drop the luggage and could you bring us into the so that was about a 10-minute drive. So we went to get all our groceries, and then we had to, they don't have Grab or Uber or Lyft. So we had to call a landline taxi company, and then they had to send another taxi to pick us up. And it was really expensive, like 20, 30 euros
one way
for a 10-minute trip, you know. So, but we didn't have a choice. So we were in for a big culture shock, you know, where we thought, you know, we can just go down to a convenience store and buy stuff. You know, that's not going to happen. So, but I think the apartment was beautiful. Ocean was right there. There were many hiking trails. There's one that goes around the whole island that would take you like 10 over days to complete. But I think we settled in on that first day, and I think the start of this sabbatical was really not easy. I think for myself, for the first 2 weeks, very uncomfortable because we weren't on social media. We didn't use Netflix, and you know, we just tried to go back to basics, you know, waking up early, praying, reading the Bible, going for a long run and walk. And in the afternoon, sometimes we would use YouTube to watch some sermons and, you know, just spend time in conversation with each other, which, you know, coming from Singapore and the fast-paced life we were living, it was really like
Yeah.
almost cold turkey,
Yeah.
you know, so it was quite difficult at the start.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like when we left, I knew at that point that I had an addiction to my phone. And I had known about that problem for a long time. And that was part of the reason why we wanted to go away as well, to do a complete reset. Because I felt like I was stuck in this addiction cycle with my phone. And if I had shown you the screen time stats on my phone, it would be very embarrassing how much time I would spend on like Instagram, 小红书, all these things. And on one hand, one can say that like it's, oh, that's where ministry is, that's where you know you talk about Christ and whatnot. Should I say that all again? Oh,
It's okay.
it's falling. Yeah, my ministry is on there and I'm doing good things, supposedly, but all that time, from every waking moment, the moment I wake up till when I shower, till before I go to bed, I am doom scrolling and I am on my phone the whole time. And I just couldn't find a way to break out of that addiction. And when we went away, we made conscious decisions to just delete all my social media apps. I was just going to be away for a while, and also to not resubscribe to entertainment subscriptions. It really felt like we were jumping into it cold turkey, and because the convenience was not really there, it's not like, you know, we can go downstairs to NTUC and buy something here. It's literally a 10 to 15 drive and a 20 euro trip away. We had to really ration our resources and plan our time well. So when we were there, it suddenly felt like we were very understimulated because there was no flashing things in my all the time. All the random TikTok sounds was still there for the first 2 weeks, which was surprising to me because I didn't realize how cluttered and noisy my brain was until we were in a quiet place. And then I was like, where is all this noise still coming from? There's no stimulation, but my body and my mind and my spirit probably needed time to flush out all of that nonsense that had been clogging up my brain and soul for past number of months. So when we were there, first 2 weeks, highly uncomfortable. We would wake up early in the morning, and I don't think I had very good sleep at all the whole time we were there, which was strange because I always slept well in Singapore. I never had an issue falling asleep or staying asleep, but I had problems with both of that in Menorca, falling asleep and staying asleep. So I don't know if that was just like a spiritual thing or a real physical, visceral reaction to like the understimulation and the change in environment. But the first 2 weeks were so uncomfortable because there was one day we were walking on the beach and, you know, I was asking God like, okay, we're already here. What else should we do? Like, what is the purpose of us? What were we supposed to get out of this? And I felt him drop a word in my heart. And I knew that it wasn't from me because I never thought about this word before. But he said that, you know, the word that he dropped in my heart was, this is rehab. It's not even just a sabbatical that you're just taking a break. It's that he is taking all my addictions and replacing them with a healthy relationship with these things again. And yeah, in that moment, I remember turning to him and I was like, God is saying this is rehab, you know, and I really feel like I had those withdrawal symptoms, trying to reach for my phone every 5 minutes to, you know, with muscle memory, go to the app mindlessly. But thank God the apps were already deleted, so I couldn't do that. But that phantom movement was still there. The muscle memory was still there. So I think it took about 2 weeks in total to completely get rid of those and establish some new patterns. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we also had, you know, on our long walks and hikes, we would ask each other, like, are we truly happy? And what if God called us to stay here forever? And we never updated our social media ever again. And we just lived this wilderness, quiet lifestyle here in Spain or anywhere He called us. Like, would we truly be happy? And I think for myself, it was a difficult question because at the back of my mind, you know, I think the people who knew we were going on sabbatical, it almost felt like they would expect us to come back with amazing revelations, you know, but I was just asking God and asking, you know, ourselves, like, what if this trip was not meant for us to have incredible revelations, but just God wanting us God wanting us to spend time with Him in His Word. And I'm sure, revelations would come as a byproduct. But if we were chasing results, being so Singaporean, right?
KPIs, right?
What is the fruit of this sabbatical?
Yeah.
If you don't bring back anything amazing, is it even worth the time? But I think, over that month of just difficult conversations, I think I became comfortable with the fact that I wouldn't say I was overjoyed, if God asked us to just stay in this lifestyle forever, but I think I would have been comfortable if that was what He asked us to do. And yeah, that was quite an interesting revelation. And of course, we were diving in. We started from scratch again at reading the Old Testament, and just many revelations through His Word, which I think really helped us when we came back. But I think the other thing for me that I really wrestled with God was financial providence, because we do have an investment portfolio, which on hindsight, is one of the things that I put a lot of my security in. Yes, we're not going to have active income, but I knew we had a nest egg that would keep growing. And honestly, we would be comfortable for a very, very long time. But at the time, I knew that, we've shared this in other videos before, like, we know this is from God and we're just stewarding it. Like, all this money in the investments, we're just stewarding it for Him, and we want to, we'll share more about this in subsequent videos, but, we know it's for His kingdom, and we want to use this money to further His kingdom by supporting, fellow believers and ministries that we believe in. And I think the moment that we start thinking that it's for ourselves and to better our lifestyle and buy a nicer car or house, I
lost the plot.
I pray that we don't get there. So, in my heart, I knew, yes, it gave me security, but it's also, I knew that it's God's money, so I wasn't holding it too tightly. But when we were there, in March and April, those were one of the worst months and our portfolio was down massively. And I'll share more in subsequent videos. But so I was struggling with God, like, you brought us here, and I already told you it's your money, and still you want to make my portfolio go down like so much, So it was really difficult, but I felt God tell me that this is my way of showing you that you are not God. Because He has been very, very, He does a lot. And, He's also given me, what I thought was some anointing on my decision making, the stocks to buy and everything. And last year was amazing in terms of our stock performance. And and I had certain ideas that I wanted to execute, like when to sell and when to even short the market, because I saw like, things were not sustainable. And a few things happened that I didn't execute that plan. And then in the end, things went terribly from March to April. But I just felt in my heart that God was saying, this is to show you that you are not God and I am God. And even with your portfolio down by so much, it is still my money. It is still, I'm in control, and I'm going to show you that I can provide. And to help you realize that, I had to realize that I was putting, something else ahead of God. Maybe not ahead, but, still very close importance in my heart, and maybe I didn't really realize, because investing is so passive, we don't withdraw the money out, we just leave it there. But I think, He wanted to show me that my security can't be even in your stock portfolio, that you are not planning to touch or use for, buying like extravagant stuff. We stayed in an apartment that was 1,000 Sing dollars a month. We could have afforded to stay more lavishly, but that's not really our lifestyle as well. So, but for me, one of the biggest realizations and struggles was really financial dependence as well. And
I think there was an unexpected outcome that trip, because it wasn't even something that was on either of our radars, that was a secret security blanket outside of God. Until we got there and things didn't go our way that was planned, but ultimately, God had plans for good, and it was almost like in a that He exposed that So for me, that it was like the social media addiction thing, and for you, that was like the revealing of that as a secret security blanket, false security blanket. And I think another thing was also we had to grapple with hiddenness, right? Like you were talking about if God had called us to truly just never post anything on social media again, never do anything publicly again, maybe never ever step on stage ever again, would we be truly satisfied in Him? And I would say that process started when we were preparing to leave for Menorca, to leave on the sabbatical. Like we started reading a book called Will You Choose the Wilderness? And that is by Samuel Whitfield. I didn't pick it out specifically because we were going on a sabbatical. It just happened to be the book that caught my eye. And while reading it, it was almost as if God was using that to give us language for what the season of sabbatical and wilderness was going to be. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about this concept, right? Like people always talk about wilderness in the Christians in terms of, testing and in terms of being far away from God. But what if the wilderness is also a place in the Bible where you are close to God and where you can only rely on God? It's a place of joyful communion with God. And if you think about it, Jesus did often retreat, like especially as his fame grew, when his public ministry grew, he often retreated to places that were desolate to be with the Father. And that's a way of counteracting all of the activity, the hubbub, the fame of it all, and to stick close to the Father. And I felt like that really gave us a perspective of, okay, at this point, we were supposed to go away in mid-February, right? And we would have just concluded a successful China tour at the end of in December of 2024 and leading into a whole bunch of activity in January and February of 2025. So to most people, it wouldn't make sense to suddenly that activity and to go away for a few months, because the natural fear would be, what if people forget about me? This is like things are picking up steam and momentum. You should be, pedaling, put the pedal to the metal and like just go full steam ahead. But we knew that was already not on the cards for us because it was unsustainable for ourselves and our marriage and what we viewed to be important, our relationship with God. So yeah, it almost felt very countercultural and quite punk to be going away for a few months, though that wasn't the purpose. It wasn't just going away for the sake of rebelling against whatever social norms or what. Yeah, but I remember being in the middle of going everywhere during this December China tour, because we were taking the Gaotie, the train, and I remember having a realization, and that was that I would be equally happy going on the train onto the next city, onto the next stage, as I would be sitting at home with him, with our cats. And that was the point I realized that, wow, God had already done a work in our hearts to prepare us for this time of hiddenness away in the wilderness, to really let go of the stage and what that represented in my life before, the significance, the glitz, whatever, however it looks to other people. And I think that sort of set the tone for a time of hiddenness. It really prepared my heart to not be tethered to, what are people going to think, or are they crazy or whatnot. Yeah, so that time away in Menorca just felt like a happy little bubble, even though the first 2 weeks were so uncomfortable. But I think it was a moment where we spent many moments of our day being intentional with our time with God, and even in the way that we prepared our food and nourished our bodies, and even training. Yeah, even though there wasn't a gym in town, we were doing a lot of running. And that also meant a lot of time in nature, just watching the beautiful waves, the beach, going hiking and enjoying God's creation. I think all of that really helped to restore some balance into what was missing from our busy life in Singapore, very city, very crowded out by deadlines and schedules and activity. Yeah, I felt like I really needed that time away. Yeah.
And I think in subsequent videos, we'll definitely dive deeper into our revelations that we got from this trip. And yeah, I think on things like and our calling and ministry, what it looks like, yeah, we will definitely share more, in future videos. And
Yeah, I remember us telling our friends before going away that everything was on the table and we were prepared to lay it all down, that from where we would live to our idea of church, of ministry, of our career, our life together, and just everything lah. Everything was on the table going into this sabbatical for God to disturb and to rejig so that it would be aligned to Him. I thank God that there was that common desire to want to seek Him, and I think in many moments that has been got us through, all those arguments and whatnot. And I think like the other day I realized, I was saying, I'm so proud of the person that you become, even though you're so different from the person that I married. And I think the same could have been said for me as well. And I think the only thing that really keeps us together is God, because we've been married for 6 years. This is our 7th year of marriage. That's the other thing, like this desire to go away and to be realigned to God happened to be our 7th year of marriage, which is significant in the Bible, which is 7 is the number of completion, and it's almost like one full cycle. And I feel like it was about time to kind of clean house and to see like if there were any weeds that we needed to get rid of, and to really focus on the direction, the next 7-year cycle of our. I'm just so thankful that God is our anchor and that we both have this desire to pursue Him. That's not any credit to ourselves. I think that's entirely the work of the Holy Spirit, and I'm just thankful that we got to have this time away, and that God also provided the resources for us to be able to do that, and the peace in our hearts to be away. Because if you want to talk about the reasons for and against being away for so many months, you could find reasons to stay in Singapore that were very practical and perfectly good reasons. But we chose to be away, and that really our lives and our hearts.
So we had to Menorca after 35 days because someone was booking the apartment. So we had to make our way to Cape Town. So from Menorca, we flew to a northern Spanish city called Bilbao. And then we would spend a week there, and then we had to transit through Istanbul, Turkey. So it was going to be another 12 days there, and eventually making our way from Istanbul to Cape Town for 3 months, and then coming back to Singapore. So we went to Bilbao, and I think that's where you started feeling a bit of nausea.
So we were in Bilbao, and so the change in the environment was quite stark because we went from a sleepy beach town that had all the shop fronts closed. The only thing open in town was maybe an Italian sandwich shop, and towards the end the bus started running because it turned to spring. But honestly, that was still way less activity than what we're used to here in Singapore or in any big city. So when we got to Bilbao, which is a relatively bustling city, it was almost as if there was we were like into society, into civilization. And we were living in a hotel room which didn't have a kitchen, which meant that every meal was to be eaten out. And that was a huge change from us cooking every single meal in Menorca. Less oil, no seed oils, carbs, minimal carbs. But when we were in Bilbao, it felt like, a holiday, right? When we were there. And we went to San Sebastian, and that's like the birthplace Basque cheesecake, by the way. We're in like Basque country. And we went to the birthplace of the Basque cheesecake, and we had 2 slices, which is the minimum number of slices. And it was so rich, and I probably took like 1 mouthful too many, and I just felt so sick afterwards. And I remember writing in my journal, I don't know if this is just symptomatic of like if this was just a physical reaction, normal physical reaction, or if it was a symptom of a spiritual problem, that we were back in excess. You know, we were back in a place that was filled with so many options to fill your mind with and fill your stomachs with. Yeah, so I was like, trying to find some reason for it. And the nausea just continued for, I don't know, the next 1.5 weeks.
So I think that's when we suspected that you were pregnant.
Yeah.
But it was still too early to test.
Yes.
But so we were still, we will just carry on with the sabbatical and whatever happens. But I think when we made our way to Turkey, this was probably 3 days into our stay in Istanbul. And I was just feeling like, do I really want to make our way all the way to Cape Town? We got to restart our lifestyle again.
Find a new routine, get used to the environment, settle in all over again. And it would be how many, like a 10-hour flight there. So I remember, I think our sleepless nights continued when we were in Istanbul. Didn't really have a good sleep. And there was one night where I was feeling so nauseated and so homesick that I was looking up Teochew porridge recipes on YouTube. Like, can I make this myself? How long more do I have to wait? I even downloaded a countdown app on my phone that I can put on the homepage so that I have a countdown number to the time that we would return home. And that same evening when I was up on my phone, sleepless, couldn't get any sleep, I turned around and realized that Daniel was awake and his phone was like shining in his face. And so I asked him, what are you checking on your phone? Then he said, flights back to Singapore. I was like, praise the Lord. I don't have to be the one to bring up the fact that, I didn't want to be a downer because there was still this cool adventure that of us. And I just was so thankful that God was also speaking to him that way. But why were you checking flights at that hour?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking, hey, maybe, what if we don't go to Cape Town now? Or maybe just go home for a while, check up on our cats, and maybe we still can go to South Africa. So I was just looking at options and then realizing that, from Istanbul to Cape Town is a 10-hour flight. But Istanbul to Singapore is also a 10-hour flight. And I was just checking the possibility of cancelling or making adjustments. And so I shared it with her, and we had to really ask ourselves, to go back. We ran through many combinations, but I think ultimately we felt like we were ready to leave the wilderness and really almost like put everything to the test, because coming back to Singapore would be one of the toughest things, to live a life of rest and fasting. It's very difficult, but I think we both felt like we were ready to give it a try. And nothing is set in stone. We could always leave again. So that night, that was like 5 a.m. in the morning. We got up, went to the laptop, checked whether we could go all
Airbnb, the car rental. So we had everything settled for South Africa. So we had to find out if we could get at least maybe like a partial refund or something on all of those bookings. And thank God, at least there were some full refunds and there were some partial refunds, and there were some that you just needed a fee to change the flight to something else. And we're just thankful that all of those were options for us. So we made that call, and I even asked him, is it crazy for us to go home like today? So you check the flights, and by 5 p.m. that very same day, we were on a flight back to Singapore.
That's how our sabbatical ended. And, of course, upon coming back, we knew that we didn't want to dive straight into
activity
again. So we thought the best way is to not tell people we were back. So at least give it, we didn't have a, deadline, but maybe at least a month. So we managed to settle into our routine, back to the usual, exactly the same things we were doing on sabbatical. And I think we didn't tell them for about a month. And I think it was Easter, which was end of April, that we knew we wanted to be in our church at Easter. And so that's when we appeared again. And then, slowly friends in church knew that we were back. But, we didn't publicly announce anything. And now it's been like 2 or 3 months since we've been back, and it's been great. And I think we'll share maybe what we're up to now in the next video. And anything else you want to add?
No. If there are any questions or comments, you all can put it in the comment section, and so we know what focus the next few videos should be on. But yeah, I feel like we've been dropped back into this. It's almost like we've been changed on our time away, that we can come back and slowly ease our way back into these activities that God has called us back to, but with a renewed purpose and with a new, healthier relationship with them, that we're not relying on these things for purpose or for significance, but we are really doing it out of an overflow of our relationship with God. And I'm just so happy that that connection is restored back to God, and I just feel a lot more settled now that we are back in Singapore and really putting this new, renewed relationship to the test. Yeah. So
yeah, that's our story so far. See you at the next video.
bye.